Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from whence will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day, the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life, your coming and your going, now and forevermore. Let us find comfort in the words of the ancient sage. God, what are we that you are mindful of us? Or indeed, those who come after us that you take account? Our lives are as vanity, for our days pass away as a shadow. In the morning we flourish and blossom forth. In the evening we are cut down and wither. You turn us to contrition and demand return, O ye children. If you were wise, you would consider your end. When you die, you shall carry nothing away. Your glory shall not descend after you. But trust this, God does redeem the souls of the servants. None of them who trust shall be forsaken. The poet exhorts us this way. He said, let the thoughts of this moment be thoughts of tenderness and gratitude. Tenderness because of the man in whose memory we are now gathered. Gratitude for all that has been lovable throughout the years. Tenderness toward every human frailty. Gratitude for a life known intimately and held in honor. Gratitude for strong ties of family affection. Gratitude for the privilege of knowing and of sharing with one another our experiences of joy and sorrow. Gratitude for opportunities to help and care for one another, which enable us to believe that our lives count. We would not be spared the consciousness of sorrow and loss. As our experience deepens, may our understanding of one another deepen also. And may we win from our joys and sorrows the wisdom of patience and sympathy, the courage to live faithfully, and the confidence that dark hours may have precious meanings. And may we gain a deepened sense of the sacredness and worth of a life well lived. Amen. Hatzor tamim paolo ki chol drachav mishpat, el emunah ve'einav el tzadik v'yashar hu. Hatzor tamim b'chol poal. Mi yomar lo ma tifal hashalit b'mat u'v'ma'al memit u'mechayei morit she'o v'ya'al. Hatzor tamim b'chol ma'aseh. Mi yomar lo ma ta'aseh. Tzadik ata Adonai, lahamit ulahachayot, asher biyadcha pitkon kol ruchot. Halila lecha zichronenu limchot, vayihiuna inecha barachamim aleinu pichuchot, ki lecha Adon harachamim vehaslichot. Thy work, O God, is perfect, for all thy ways are justice, a God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and right. Who can say, what doest thou? Thou bringest death and giveth life. What mortal can demand of thee? What hast thou wrought? Thou alone, O God, dost righteously apportion both life and death. In thy hand is the destiny of all souls. Thou wilt not forget us. Thy mercy will surely abide with us. Blessed art thou, Judge of truth, who dost ordain death and summon us to life. It is considered a great mitzvah to offer a eulogy for someone who has died, to speak good words of love, of memory, and of caring. And we will be especially honored today that in this order, Rob and then Annette and Jeffrey will offer words.
On behalf of the family, thank you all for coming here today. My name is Rob Rubin. I have the pleasure of being married to Gary's daughter, Annette, for more than 30 blessed years. As many of you know, Gary spent his wonder years in Palestine and fought to help found the State of Israel. Although he spent most of his life here, his character was formed there. and the story of his life seems, to me, like something out of the Bible. Gary Lidawer arrived in Palestine by ship from Poland through Romania in 1937, at the age of 6, with his mom, Adela. They settled in Nahalal, a moshav near Haifa. Gary remembered that as a child, he would follow the young men, including a guy named Moshe Dayan. When he was around 12, Gary lived a year with a family named Eitan at a kibbutz nearby called Tel Adashim, where he shared a room with a boy his age named Rafi. Many years later, this roommate, known as Raful, became a very famous army chief of staff in Israel. At the age of 14, Gary joined the Scouts, and at 16 he joined the Palyam, the forerunner of the famous Shayetet Shloshesrei, the equivalent to the U.S. Navy SEALs. Gary showed me pictures of one mission in which he was a part of a small team that secured the port of Haifa when the British evacuated. His commander, only a few years older, was Yochai Ben Nun, one of the most famous heroes in the state of Israel, who eventually became the commander of Shayetet. Even this past weekend, Gary was showing us pictures of him and Ben Nun and telling us stories about the guy. Gary didn't talk much about his military service, but he was a lot more than just a naval commando. One day, I was randomly watching a PBS TV documentary about the 1948 War of Independence when a picture suddenly flashed across the screen of someone who looked like a very young Gary Lidawer. I called him and asked him if he'd ever been in the battle for Jerusalem. Never heard about that. He said yes. He'd also fought at Latrun and the surrounding area, trying to clear the road to Jerusalem. Gary was discharged at the age of 17 from the military, from the Portzim Battalion. After that, he joined the Israeli Merchant Marine, where he made lifelong friends who he stayed in touch with from afar. While Gary was growing up in Nahalal, his mom remarried a man from her village named Avadia, who had fought for the British in Egypt and found his way to Palestine. Avadia helped raise the teenage Gary and gave him 2 sisters, Hannah and Malka. Gary maintained a close relationship with all of them across the years and the miles. And even this past week, Gary had a wonderful conversation with Malka. Annette and I, and our children as well, are all very close with Malka's children in Israel. After sailing the world for several years as a merchant seaman, Gary came to the U.S. in the early 50s. He ended up with a cousin in Cincinnati, where he met Ruth Carter, a survivor from Eastern Europe. Gary and Ruth got married, moved to Cleveland, where they had 2 children, one of whom is my beautiful wife. In Cleveland, Gary found a job at WeatherTight, a manufacturer and regional distributor of doors, windows, siding, and other construction products. He started at the bottom, minimum wage, quickly worked his way up in the company, ultimately becoming director of plant operations, supervising almost 500 employees. Gary left after about 20 years, bought a small lamp manufacturing company, turned it around to make it profitable, operated until he retired. After his children left the house, he and Ruth got divorced, although I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that they continued to care a lot for each other. About 10 years later, Gary met Sherry, and 2 months short of his 66th birthday, they got married. At an age when most men are thinking about playing golf and lounging around, Gary started a second family and had 2 more children, Jeffrey and Jessica. After 9/11, at the age of 70, Gary joined the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary and attained the highest rank he could as a civilian. The only thing he was not allowed to do was carry weapons on duty. As with most of his activities, Gary threw himself into this, spending many hours each week at the Coast Guard station at Fairport Harbor and on patrol in Lake Erie. He told me the reason he joined was that he wanted to give something back to the country where he had made his life. He was always a tough guy, and in the Coast Guard, he used to do annual qualification drills into his 80s, including jumping into the icy waters of Lake Erie. When I look back upon my father-in-law's life and his accomplishments, I'm struck by his struggles and successes. Twice, Gary arrived in a new country, not knowing the language, any people, nothing about the culture. Each time he succeeded in building something substantial and making a worthwhile contribution to society. In each place, he served in a role that put him in harm's way. He gave a lot and asked for nothing in return, and he built something which the next generation will grow and cherish. The legacy of Gary Lidawer is truly inspirational.
You just heard, I'm Annette Lidawer, and I'm Gary's oldest child, and he has four, Annette, and Danny, Jeffrey, and Jessica, and I'd like to say a couple of impressions from that. So you just heard how our dad came from Israel and spent his adult life in the United States. Our father was a very complex person. From when my brother Danny and I were very young, we joked that he was a true Sabra, which means Israeli, but it has a much deeper meaning, the word sabra. It's also a type of fruit, which is rough-skinned and tough on the outside, and sweet and tender on the inside. At times, Dad's gruff bark and his temper would mask an extremely caring and passionate individual. He cared about this country, about Israel, about politics and people so deeply and so completely that it was sometimes overwhelming. He loved us and his family just as deeply. Dad had a code of fairness and justice that he lived by. And while it sometimes drove him too hard or he refused to veer off the path it took him down, he was consistently true to his beliefs. Dad was the hardest worker I've ever met. Give him a task to do on a ship, with anything mechanical, at the house, in his factory, or in the yard, and it was just a matter of time before he completed it, made the situation more efficient, or fixed it. He had the immigrant hunger to do better, to strive higher, and to thrive. He was grateful to this country for the opportunities it afforded him and his family, always. He led a full life. How many people can bridge the gap of being a citizen of two nations? How many people can successfully raise two families? How many people can participate in life fully, in life's activities and the times that we live in for the duration of their entire lives? Whether it was classical music or Bruce Springsteen, war movies or Neil Diamond, Tel Aviv beaches or New York City, Gary Lidawer did it all. He did it completely and he did it fully. We are grateful to him for giving us life, for leading by example of hard work, good organization, and for giving us heart. He went out the way he came in, fighting to better himself, fighting Israel's enemies, fighting to protect America's shores, fighting to come to this country, raise two families to the best of his abilities, fighting to live life to the fullest. We loved him for that strength, and we admired him for that determination. Even at the end, which was very sudden, he did things on his terms, and he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Before I step down and close, I just wanted to add that two of Dad's grandsons served recently in combat units in the Israel Defense Forces, which is why you see an Israeli flag here. And Jeffrey, his son, is doing Naval ROTC, which is why you see an American flag, both of which will be buried with him. Our son Matthew is not here today, and he's still in Israel. And as he left his grandfather 2 weeks ago, he sent me a little quote that he asked me to read. So the last thing Grandpa said to me was, "Now get out of here. Never hurt anyone. Do you hear me? Never hurt anyone ever." He may have lived with violence in much of his life, but he died with peace in his heart. Thank you.
failure to prepare. If there's one thing I planned on doing last night, it was certainly not this speech. My dad lived, laughed, loved, and fought the hardest in all that he did. For my father, there was only do try and don't try. And if he chose do try, he completed. My dad taught me the importance of simplicity and how a simple mind with an unconquerable spirit coupled with a simple plan will lead to simply victory. If I ever spoke too convolutedly, I'd usually hear a Jeffrey, don't hecken me the Chinik, which for those of you who aren't Jewish, in his terms, usually just meant shut the hell up and please say that again. My dad saw the world simply, and there's no better way to see it. With a simple lens, everything becomes attainable, and the impossible, quite possible. He was the toughest man I ever met, and he showed me that men cry and show their emotions and lead calmly, while cowards lead with emotion and hide them when they should expose them. He taught me that love is a force that transcends everything, whether it be war, death, or the afterlife. I write letters. It's a hobby I do, and I do it for everybody. Whether it's for my father, sister, mother, dog, or girlfriend. I write letters because even though I understand that people know how I feel about them, I despise uncertainty. And I always feel the need to literally tell people what I need to tell them. I wrote my father this letter so he was certain, without a doubt, that I will love and cherish all of his existence, whether it was when he walked the earth or when he transcended it. Dad, you're a crazy man that really never hated anyone, only strongly disliked them. You never sipped on things, you always gulped them. You never got angry, you always got furious. You never moved slow, only as fast as you could. You never gave up on me, and I'll never give up on you. I hope you're raising hell wherever you are, and to whoever they are. And whoever they are, they certainly deserve it. Thank you for teaching me the lessons of manhood, while always reminding me to be a boy, to love and to fight with my heart. For teaching me that every human, and for teaching me that everyone once was human, everyone is human, and everyone once was nothing. For giving me the love of the ocean, sea, and everything in between. For teaching me that a human life can either be priceless or worthless, and that misery is just a waste of time, so I'm probably just better off smiling. There are a few things that you couldn't do, and that was okay, because not everyone can do everything. And I love you, and I hope the trails never end, the tide never fades, and your skies never cloud. And I signed my name in all caps, because for those of you who ever got an email from him, he wasn't yelling at you over the years, he just didn't know how to type it. And then, I wanted to read a letter from my sister, which she wrote last night as well. To my dearest father, you were one tough man, and you showed me how to be independent and caring towards other people. You're a very hardworking man. Wherever you put your mind to anything, you always got the job done. I'll miss catching rays with you in the summer sun and helping you with the yard work. And I'll miss seeing you clean the table every night. But I know you're in a better place now. And heaven's gained another angel. Please watch over us, big guy. Love you with all my heart. Your daughter, Bubba. Thanks.
When I was a school child, we were taught about our ideal relationship with the land and country of Israel. And our teacher used a phrase from a popular Jewish folk song that rang in my heart when I learned more about Gary and the amazing life or lives that he lived. The phrase is livnot ulehibanot. It means to build and to be built. As you heard, Gary literally helped build the land and country of Israel. In return, it built him and shaped him into the man we mourn and eulogize today. A loving father, husband, grandfather, and proud American. Gary's story could have been very different. By age 7, he was scarred by Europe and uprooted to Israel. But it was a time that felt both urgent and timeless, a time when a teenage boy could find biblically proportioned heroes around every corner as they shared a commitment to the greatest adventure and purpose life might offer us, the true rescue and revivification of a people. When most boys might contemplate the meaning of their lives, he'd already finished his national service and accomplished great things. Coming to this country and finding Ruth allowed him to pick up some of those European threads and weave them into American wool to form the tapestry most of us would recognize today. His guiding values were love of family, hard work, and service to country. To paraphrase Yehuda Halevi, Gary lived in the West while his heart was in the East. His particular immigrant story added to the texture we know as this country, and his children, Annette, with Rob later, and Daniel and Rachel later, have built their lives in the security and strength that their father prized. That his beloved Matthew, Ariel, Allison, Aaron, and Alana, and Joshua are able to live their lives both here and in Israel is justification and celebration of the forces that shaped Gary and the values he exemplified through his deeds. That his son-in-law rises to eulogize him after learning so very much of his history is remarkable additional testimony to Gary's life. When we were talking in the hospital and Gary was sharing some of his stories with me, I couldn't help but notice how he kept turning to Cheryl to include you in the conversation. He knew we were speaking Hebrew, and he loved that we were speaking Hebrew, and he kept looking to make sure that you were part of that conversation. And he wanted to do something else. He wanted to smile with his eyes, to smile a satisfaction and completion that comes from shlemut, wholeness, that he felt and he found with you. Your lives with Jeffrey and Jess gave him great pleasure. That his service to America inspired Jeffrey gave him great joy. Again, livnot ulehibanot. He built and he was built. Seemingly ageless, Gary lived a life of worth to you as a family and to the community of which he was proud to be a part. He maintained close relationships with his sister Malka and Hannah across the miles and the years. There are so many more memories we could vocalize in this moment. We are gathered in this loving and intimate assembly to only begin to pay tribute to the life and give honor to Gary's memory. So much more will yet come. In our sharing of stories and smiles, in our tears and inspirations, we will remember him. King Solomon intoned a blessing. He said, Zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. It's a little strange formulation. May his memory be for a blessing. Not the things he did, but the way that we remember him. And I think what King Solomon wanted us to know and wanted us to do was to take the memories and let them continue to inform us and to inspire us and to teach us. Then indeed will not only his memory, but his life too will be for a blessing. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. Amen. May Gary's memory endure among us all as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that with you is the fountain of life, that in your light we shall see light. The dust returns to the earth as it was, the spirit to God who gave it. It is only the house of the Spirit which we lay within the earth. The Spirit itself cannot die. Here our dear ones continue in the loving remembrance of those to whom they were precious. We pray, dear God, that you receive Gary's soul. Grant him that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. May I ask those of you who are able to please rise. El malei rachamim shochein bamromim, hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, אם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת גרשון החבר שלנו שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצור בצורך החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום המשכבו, ונאמר, Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of our beloved Gary, who has departed this world. Source of mercy, bring him into your presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is his possession. May he repose in peace. And let us all say, Amen. Please be seated. The ancient sage Ben Sira teaches us this. Fear not death. We are destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived and with all who will ever be. Bewail the dead, hide not your grief, do not restrain your mourning. But remember, continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory rest. Be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest than constant sickness. Seek not to understand why. It is too difficult for you. Search not for what is hidden from you. Be not overoccupied with what is beyond you, for you've been shown more than you can understand. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are a person's few days in eternity. The good things in life last for limited days, but a good name endures forever. Would you join me, please, in the 23rd Psalm? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The Lidawer family would like to let you know that Shiva will be observed following services today until 8:30, tomorrow from 2 to 4, and 6:30 to 8:30, of course on North Burr Oak Drive in Solon. Our service will continue at the cemetery. I'd like to thank representatives from the Coast Guard Auxiliary for being with us today and representing that which was so important to him. This thought comes from Chaim Potok. We live less than the time it takes to blink an eye if we measure our lives against eternity. So it may be asked, what value is there to a human life? There is so much pain in the world. What does it mean to have to suffer so much if our lives are nothing more than the blink of an eye? I learned a long time ago that the blink of an eye in itself is nothing, but the eye that blinks, that is something. A span of life is nothing, but the person who lives the span is something. A person can fill that tiny span with meaning. Meaning is not automatically given to life. It is hard to fill one's life with meaning. But a life filled with meaning is worthy of rest. We will continue at the cemetery. Please remain seated.